Esengo nanga ya ralentir vitesse ya ebale elingo yebani nango naza koseka seka apeshor lelo bamonaki venemo ndenge bamami wata bazali kolela nini yango nzambe asali ekelamu oyo aleki bango na kitoko mpe charme kombo na ye Nathalie nkombo na ye Nathalie
Esengo nange ralentir vitesse ya mabata sanza na moi babatami po bakontemple
beauté ya Nathalie po bazokomprendre te ndenge nini nzambe asaleli bango rival mwana mongale Nathalie Primera Californie. Le ciel a yebike ne clôture lopango ya nzambe il fallait que nzambe apakola couleur ya Nathalie. Pourquoi nzambe apesaki ye kaka couleur bleu Nathalie
couleur or.
On va voir. Esengo nanga i ralentir vitesse ya
nothing more beautiful than good company. Nothing more beautiful than a true lover's kiss. There is nothing more beautiful than the laughter of a child. Nothing more beautiful than those smiling eyes. There is nothing more beautiful, nothing more beautiful, nothing more beautiful. It's a beautiful world, what a beautiful world.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we please rise for the arrival of our...
Yes, it's a beautiful world, yeah. Yes, it's a beautiful world. Oh, what a beautiful world. There is nothing more beautiful than the power of music. Nothing more beautiful than a moment of peaceful silence. There is nothing more beautiful than a few kind words. Nothing more beautiful than that pregnant moon.
The First Lady of the Republic of Namibia, Madame Monica Genkos. Our guest of honor this evening, retired Deputy Chief Justice of South Africa, Judge Dikgang Moseneke. Members of the South African Society of Advocates, led by Advocate Maleka, present here today. Judges of the High Court of Namibia. My colleagues at Sisana Manje and Company, and your family members. Members of Parliament and the Executive present here today. Members of the Society of Advocates in Namibia present here today. Members of the legal profession at large in Namibia. Captains of industries. Members of the media. And our distinguished invited guests in your distinguished respective capacities present here today. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Taimi Ileka Amupanda, and I will be your Director of Ceremonies for this evening. May I begin by welcoming you to the fourth book launch of a book written by Sisana Manje and Company. And just for points today, we have added a public lecture which will be delivered by Judge Dikgang Moseneke. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what promises to be an interesting and exciting evening in the legal fraternity. Now, this morning, in the High Court of Namibia, Judge Oitele admitted 2 legal practitioners. And in admitting them, he congratulated them and reminded them that they're entering a noble profession, an honorable profession, and asked them to live up to those standards. And I found myself wondering how very often as legal practitioners we get admitted and we take our oath, which is rather beautiful, but how often do we remind ourselves of what that oath actually means to ourselves and to our duty as legal practitioners in society? And when I say legal practitioners, I speak from legal practitioners all the way to the highest accolades of courts in our country and beyond. Because before we are anything else, we are legal practitioners who have taken an oath to truly and honestly demean ourselves to this profession. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening, I borrow from my youngest son, Frantz Fanon, who reminds us that each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it in relative opacity. And this evening, we are joined by 2 distinguished gentlemen who, in my qualified opinion, I consider have found their generational missions and have accomplished it and live amongst us. I consider them legends. A revolutionary judge. Yes, Judge Moseneke, I consider you revolutionary. And yeah, I don't know how to describe my boss, but ladies and gentlemen, a very busy man who still finds time to contribute to the legal profession, Sisana Manje. And I have the honor of directing those proceedings. Now, before us is a rather short program, we are going to have welcoming remarks by Ms. Tambushanje Ntinda. And then right after the welcoming remarks, we will have the introduction of our guest speaker by Advocate Vincent Maleka, Senior Counsel. And then we are going to have the presentation of our public lecture for this evening by the retired Deputy Chief Justice of South Africa, Judge Dikgang Moseneke. And then right after, we will have some remarks by Advocate Raymond Heathcote, who is also Senior Counsel and an advocate of the High and Supreme Court in Namibia. And right after those remarks, we will have the introduction of tonight's book by Ms. Kula Simpson, my colleague here at Sisana Manje and Company. And after that, we will then invite Mr. Sisana Manje to just make a few remarks about why he wrote this book, the 4th one, and perhaps whether it will be the last one. And then after that, we'll have vote of thanks to be delivered by Ms. Astrid Ferris. And of course, we will have some food, some music, and a very good time. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to welcome Ms. Tambushanje Ntinda to do the official welcoming for tonight's event.
Thank you, May Ampanda, Director of Ceremony, Madam Monica Genkos. She's actually my cousin. Judges of the High Court of Namibia, directors and staff members of Sisa Namanje and Company, and indeed the family of the founding father of Sisa Namanje and Co. And I want to specifically acknowledge Ms. Lovisa Namanje, is our founding mother. Members of the Society of Advocates, legal practitioners, prosecutors, magistrates, and all members of the legal fraternity, captains of industry, members of the media, invited guests, and importantly, all our clients that are present here tonight. Welcome to the House of Sisa Namanje and Co. Incorporated. Allow me, on behalf of Mr. Namanje and the team, to welcome you all to this glorious occasion, which allows us to celebrate the addition to the jurisprudence of Namibian, or rather the legal jurisprudence of Namibia, through the launch of not the first, not the second, not the third, but the fourth book written by Mr. Namanje. He's probably one of the consistent authors that we currently have in respect of practicing legal practitioners in Namibia. And on top of that, not only that we are launching this book, we are honored to have in our mix the retired Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, who is not only in our mix, but will give us a public lecture, and which topic is so closely related to the book that Mr. Namanje has authored. It's no coincidence that Mrs. Mpanda has acknowledged them as some that has contributed or achieved their generational achievements, and we all look up to them. In our mix as well, I will be failing if I don't specifically acknowledge one of the greatest orators when it comes to the presentation of cases in our jurisdiction, the Senior Counsel of the High and Supreme Court of the Republic of Namibia, the one of the best, I will declare him the best problem solver of legal problems or issues, who always seems to find the solution even where you thought there is no solution. Advocate Heathcote. Who is also not only with us, but he will give us special remarks. And you will understand why I said he is one of the greatest orators in our jurisprudence by the time he's done. And again, although I acknowledged our client, I again just want to say, Sisa Namanje and Company is really what it is because of you. We can never find appropriate words to express how you have contributed to this great institution. We say thank you, and thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I sometimes tend to speak too much. Let me end it here. We should all feel welcome. Let's enjoy. Let's spend the night together. We have really been locked in for too long by the pandemic. We must as well, the same way we were locked up, we should also free up the same way. So after the speeches, please don't disperse. join us. We have prepared some drinks and some food, I hope. So welcome everyone, and I say thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ms. Ntinda, for the warm welcome. And I'm sure now all our guests feel at home. It's really not that serious, colleagues. So let's feel at home. Advocate Maleka, it's very nice to see you without being briefed. Because when you're on brief, you're always in a hurry. So it's rather nice to see you in this relaxed environment. And I feel like your task this evening is rather a difficult one. And it's difficult because for those that already know the retired Deputy Chief Justice, we want to see how you would describe him so we can stand on that description. Because like I said before, I consider him a revolutionary. But I want to see what you're going to say. I'm also very honored to be in the same room with the man who was in prison with Robert Mangaliso Sombukwe, because I want to tap in that kind of wisdom. So Advocate Maleka, I'm going to give you the floor to introduce to us our guest speaker for this evening.
What's happening here? Mine is a fairly straightforward task this early evening. And matters become much straightforward because where we come from, load shedding would remind you that you don't have all the time in the world. I remember not so long ago, we were here celebrating this wonderful premise and office and the achievement of CISA. And I started off by acknowledging Lobisa. Lobisa, it's good to see you again. And the family is growing. And CISA is doing his job. I remember we spent a very wonderful time in Cape Town with the young kids. They were young. I don't think they remember who was in their lovely company at that point in time. But again, thanks for welcoming us. I think that even if I'm short today, I do not risk losing a client because I have said less than what the cost demands. And mine is introduce the Deputy Chief Justice, Moseneke, in retirement. Back home, we have a constant refrain when we introduce him in public. It is the fact that he is a Chief Justice we deserved, but never had. And despite the fact that he was not a Chief Justice entitled, he continued to serve our nation faithfully, as any other Chief Justice, in fact, would be. I'm not going to repeat what has been said about him in public, because he thought it wise and obvious for him to set the public record straight about who he is, where he comes from, what he stands for, and how he hopes the African continent, by and large, frees itself from the scourge of colonialism and racism. I commend that you read his own account in 2 books or memoirs that he has written. It is out there, and it was quite fitting for us when we accompanied him this afternoon to go and meet his counterpart here, that he brought those 2 books for your Deputy Chief Justice, My Own Liberator and All Rise. Very few people have an opportunity to put the public record straight about who they are and where they come from. And so the 3 things that I'd like to say about our Chief Justice is that he is a transformative agent. If you look at what he has done over the years, as a young activist, as a prisoner, as a lawyer, as a businessman, and as a judge, he has always advocated for transformative jurisprudence. I invite you to look at the many judgments that he has read, groundbreaking as they are, simply to invite all concerned in society to take the path of transforming our lot and make yesterday's worse, tomorrow's better. I have had the privilege of sharing some common relationship with our Chief Justice over 3 decades. And it has been a wonderful learning lesson for me. And I really feel proud to tell the world that he is my mentor. And what I've learned about him with respect to his personal attributes are these. First, he is a man who celebrates achievements as much as he regrets failure. And he always reminds us that it is important and right that you should celebrate your achievements. And so, Caesar, thanks to your invitation, that we from across the borders would be here to share this wonderful moment of your 4th book. We have read it and we love it. It leaves us a track record and fingerprints of what a lawyer should be confronted by these difficult challenges of protecting confidential and secret information of their clients. The Chief Justice has an abiding commitment to detail. And he always says, if you can't master the facts, the law will not help you. He has a high ethical standard of life. And he always says, in life, ethics matter. And they matter more profoundly in our profession. And I would not, again, invite you to look at his public record. But commentaries all over about him and his public life reflects a high moral, ethical standard. I say 2 things about him in introducing him. Most important is his belief about balance in life. It's good to be a lawyer, but it's always to be good to be a family man. I'm sure somewhere down his own delivery, he will reflect upon that important balance in life. I'm not being moralistic. Family is one unit of existence. There are many other forms of existence. And my belief in his own value cuts across all those social relationships. He's a man of humility and humbleness. You look at many superstars across the globe. You look at those who have achieved in life, there is an air of some expectation about the recognition that they would want to claim whatever they are, but not so with my Chief Justice. And lastly, is a man who believes in freedom and freeness of thought. Any conversation with him, whether it is on the golf course, whether it is on a plane to Windhoek from South Africa, invites creative discussion, where he invites you to release your creative juices and engage with him at the level of one-to-one, so that you release your freedom and freeness of thought. Friends and colleagues, there we are. There is Justice Moseneke.
Good evening. Good judges write down what they want to talk about. They have to express their thought processes publicly and openly, and that you best do by writing and introduce that discipline of cultured thought. But before I go there, let me do what I have to do. Let me bring respect by acknowledging, for starters, all of you. Let me invent the prism for a while. So thank you for all of you being here. I have things to share with you, and I'm going to do just about that. So I plead for a bit of patience as I move through things that worry me. As one who lives in this region, one who's an African, and one who lives in this world. First Lady of the Republic, thank you for being here. Madam Gengos, I've already said, please do pass on my warm regards to His Excellency the President, judges and colleagues of the High Court of Namibia. Thank you for coming out. Directors and staff members of Sisa Namanja and company. Man, I have a wife of 42 years. I mean, the same wife in the same marriage. You could be married in 42 years and have like 4 wives consecutively. I mean, one. Kabonina. And she is still there, and she'll say, where are you going? And I say, I am going to Namibia. And I'm excited about it. I'll say a little bit more about Mr. Sisa Namanja in a moment. Members of Parliament and the executive, I'm glad you are here, because I'm going to talk about your terrain. Members of Society of Advocates in Namibia, members of the legal profession, a place where I've lived for well over 40 years. My life has been quite linear, profession-wise. Captains of industry, members of the media, and I've started with you already, all you distinguished guests. Please allow me to acknowledge Advocate Maleka and thank him for his kind introduction. It's not idle to claim that I am his mentor. He has other mentors, but in his career, I certainly sat in the center And when he has time one day, he will tell you how it all happened. And he's now senior counsel in his own right, quite a distinguished lawyer. And he created the connection between me and Mr. Sisa Namanje. And in many ways facilitated this invitation to your beautiful country. I acknowledge you lost Mr. Sisa Namanje precisely because in the proceedings of this evening, you are foremost. You are the kind of leader which I think Africa deserves. Avukti Malika and I, and of course the rest of the guests who are here, are here precisely on account of your energy, your industry, and your vision. Simply put, you and your entire professional and the rest of your staff are our hosts. And therefore, allow me to take this moment to commend you personally. Achievement is something very central, and its absence is very central to our poverty as African people. More importantly, this occasion at its core is the launch of your fourth book, The Lawyer's Place in Society and the Professional Secrecy Through the Cases. I've read the book. Your office will tell you how frantic I was in the last 3 days. Where is the book? I'm not going to speak until I read the book. It is particularly well written. It explores a professional privilege in an erudite but practical manner. It reflects a study that runs well beyond the Namibian common law and case law, as it displays admirable comparative law from a variety of other jurisdictions. The book does justice to the intricate and shifting boundaries of professional secrecy on the one end, against the backdrop of the troubled professional ethics of lawyers. Congratulations are properly in order, Mr. Sisa Namanje. Before I move on to my lecture, I can't resist considering the theme of your book, relaying a little story. When I laid my hands on the book, I looked up the list of cases that normally appears at the front end of the book after the foreword. And I noted that you do refer to a number of cases from around the world, including from South Africa. But what did not appear in that list was a case, Bohoshi and another versus the Director, Office of Serious Economic Offenses, reported in 1996, first volume, SA 785 SCA. Let me tell you a little about this, all of you who are here present. Mr. Bohoshi was a visibly opulent attorney with a massive third-party or accident insurance practice. His entire lifestyle reeked of money, of beautiful cars, of expensive homes. He loved expensive watches, and would change his Rolex watches with his clothing to match his clothing. He had a few farms. Overseas trips he often boasted about. And whatever else he showed around him showed him as a well-heeled man. And I was his prime counsel. If he wanted an advocate, for reasons which are not always clear to me, he briefed me. So I could see all of this wealth all around me, and I, as a guy who worked very hard in the courts. On one good evening, an army of police raided his practice and his home and removed hundreds of clients' files on the prevalent suspicion that he overreached his clients, fee-wise. The suspicion that he overcharged his clients, in other words. I was Silk. I was a senior counsel at the Pretoria Bar. My very young, fresh-faced junior in the matter was none other than Advocate Vincent Malika, who stood here earlier before you. We rushed to chambers. We prepared papers in an urgent application. Overnight, woke up a judge and had a sitting going on and procured an interim order to seal the files pending a ruling on the merits of the privilege which Mr. Bokhoshi claimed. We argued the matter up to the highest court, having obtained the interim interdict. The SCA and another SCA we lost. And here's a punchline, an important thing which will resonate later today. The court properly held that privilege is given to and is for the benefit of the client. And it's not there to shield the criminal conduct on the part of the legal professional. So when lawyers scream privilege, we as judges are duty-bound to examine it quite carefully to see whether it is a ruse to shield the otherwise unethical and or improper conduct of attorneys. I'm done with that. Our friend died not so long ago, and most of the riches had disappeared once the third-party practice had also disappeared. And may he rest in peace, because he always briefed me. I was his prime counsel. I've chosen to reflect on the connection between the rule of law, democratic accountability, and social justice within an African context. Given limited time I have here today, and to ponder more deeply over these concepts within the realm of public law, I would nonetheless want to talk this evening to you all about the use and deployment of public power in our respective countries in this continent. First, let's talk a little about what the rule of law is. It is Hobbes, the English thinker, who made the tried but observation that without a social contract, life would be short, nasty, and brutish. This sounded brilliant initially, but in fact, it was not exactly so. Most indigenous communities around the world and in our continent knew this. They lived in organized communal societies under the sway of folklore and binding customary indigenous law. This thus makes a surprising point that societies submit to the rule of law to achieve common and legitimate public purpose. People don't just live in an open-ended way. They quickly organize themselves and assume rules that would govern the way they behave towards each other and how public power is deployed in society. Of course, in the course of history, people first submitted to the rule by men and women. For instance, kingship, the feudal system, traditional leadership. Then often might was right. The strongest often was the one who gained the entitlement to rule. But importantly, that was usually without accountability to the ruled subjects and without recourse in favor of the ruled subject. Now, most countries in the world, and indeed in Africa, have conferred the power to make laws and to govern on elected representatives of the people. Think of the impressive AU protocol on representative democracy and on human and people's rights. This means that our people on the continent have made an election to submit to the rule of law, which is to be distinguished from the rule by law, which is applied in a free and non-democratic setting. So simply, We don't need a very brilliant treatise by Dicey on the rule of law to embrace it and to understand its obvious usefulness. We have committed to elect some amongst us to uphold the supreme law, to make laws, to govern, to apportion public resources, to use them in favor of society. And so to speak, we have granted some amongst us the authority to exercise public power. Or if you like to put it in simple terms, the authority to rule us. This, of course, means we are duty-bound to observe the highest electoral hygiene. The power flows from elections, and therefore you need optimal hygiene. We must hold regular and free and fair elections at local and national spheres. The source, legitimacy, and usefulness of public power derives from valid electoral processes. Sadly, and indeed often, in our continent, we have not always, in our behavior, accorded with this primal source of public power the reverence and efficiency it warrants. Many a civil war on the continent is sparked by electoral fraud or failure to abide by electoral outcomes. In other words, the will of the people, and therefore the source of accountability, is thwarted right at the fountain, at its base, at the point of elections. For now, enough said about electoral culture and hygiene. Once elected, public representatives owe accountability to those they represent. They are our agents. We have voted them into power. While some constitutions on the continent impose this requirement, being accountability, will still arise from the democratic ethos. The mere induction of a democracy implies that there will be a level of accountability. Those who hold public power vis-a-vis those who don't hold public power. So ordinarily, public power must be exercised, not only transparently or openly, for a simpler word, but for the benefit of the public at large. This is so because public power is conferred by law and electoral processes only for one reason, only for one purpose, that is to advance the public good. Our representative government must use its wherewithal to create and maintain good governance. It must protect us. It must advance our rights and entitlements as inhabitants and citizens. A good government must ward off harm. It must take all means to foster economic activity that accrue to the benefit of all. It must create inclusive growth and well-being. Just as important is that all public power must be derived from and exerted in accordance with the law. You don't wake up one morning and decide that this is the power I have. It must be preset, pre-written, and known to all before it is actually exercised. In other words, where the law does not grant a power expressly or implicitly, that power does not exist and may not be exercised. And we know on our continent, the opposite happens very often. Now, all of what I've said is trite. There's nothing new. There's nothing very clever. But it's something that ought to be said. And it's very important as I move on, you will follow this. It is self-evident that countries that observe the core tenets of democratic practice and remain by and large accountable to its electorate and inhabitants tend to have continuous and inclusive development and growth. This observation is also true when democratic practice hobbles or is severely undermined, and accountability to the people is non-existent or low, where misgovernance is tolerated and allowed to continue, where socioeconomic development, I'm afraid, also stumbles, and I'm afraid poverty also abounds. When elected governments fail to observe high standards of revenue collection, revenue protection, and appropriation, when public resources are misused, are diverted, or even stolen, where citizens and inhabitants are not beneficiaries of the lawful use of public resources, poverty and underdevelopment must ensue. Look at our continent. Look how poor the people of Africa are and have become and are becoming. Look at the low levels of social and economic development from jurisdiction to jurisdiction on our continent. Look at the perennial threats of food security and famine. Think about it. Ukrainians are 5 million, and they're producing grain for most of us, including the African continent. How does this happen? Look at how the extraction economy of most African states has not benefited the grassroots inhabitants. There's oil there, there's magnesium there, there is this there, there's gold there, there's diamond there, there's phosphate there, there is everything here and there in different countries on the African continent. But grassroots inhabitants have not benefited from that. They remain dismally poor. If anything, people of many African countries have fallen victim of internecine wars over the control of our vast minerals and gas deposits. Warlords and purveyors of raw material unleash war on their own people, or competing gang lords to the detriment of the socio-economic justice which ordinary Africans are entitled to. I must stop somewhere. I'm getting more and more emotional and angrier. But I sought to make the proposition that there is an inextricable link between the rule of law, democratic accountability, and social justice. These requirements are not fancy jurisprudential concepts, but genuine and indispensable requirements for a progressive, inclusive social system that is caring and responsive. It is worth remembering that in between elections, many jurisdictions on our continent seek to make provision for participatory democracy. In other words, you don't wait for 5 years for elections to come. These are multiple measures by members of the public to persuade their government to act within the law, or reasonably, or in favor of public good, or in favor of social justice. Some citizens take to the streets in protest marches. Lately, we have all observed street protests or even uprisings in countries around the world. Think about the inhabitants and ordinary citizens of Sri Lanka, of Indonesia, of Bangladesh, of Mexico, of Malaysia, of the United States of America. They were all in the streets one day. Of Tunisia, of India, of Libya, to mention just a few, where people take to the streets to talk to their rulers. And we've observed leaders recalled through public demand between elections. Johnson of the UK comes to mind. or the president of Sri Lanka. Where I come from, in the Republic of South Africa, street protests are frequent and ever increasing. There was one today. When there is a denigration of the rule of law, of governance, dishonoring legitimate use of public funds and resources, when there is no accountability and citizens can't call or hold the feet of the rulers to the fire, poverty and want will also increase. And that hurts the poor even more. Then we know, I've said, they take to the streets. And that ordinarily is undesirable. And therefore, a judicial system is a vital component of democratic accountability. Judges play a vital role in a society if left alone to do their work without fear or favor. Judges, in most societies, so the Constitution says at least, bear the obligation to police compliance with the law, to stop all the things that are horrible that I've just talked about. Judges must bother about the impact of the law and whether it produces justice and not merely formulaic rules of law within a particular judicial system. Of course, the highest form of accountability, besides the people, besides the courts, besides NGOs and other progressive formations within society, is electoral accountability. That's the ultimate form of accountability. The people must have the space to change their representatives. This is fair when the representatives don't do what they have to do. Because the genuine underpinning of democratic practice under the rule of law is insecurity of tenure. That bears repetition. The underpinning of democratic practice is insecurity of tenure. Public office is always premised on the notion that the term will end or might end electorally. And that threat to forfeit public office is the ultimate accountability which rests and sits in the hands of the people. And that much people in a developed democracy or developing democracy know. They, remember when I started with this lecture, employ those who wield public power, and they can remove those who wield public power if they are not good representatives who do not advance public good. As I conclude, I must make the point that I make in many places. Recap. I've talked about the rule of law, about accountability, and about social justice. I've drawn your attention to the connection between those three. We don't have law just because we have law. Its real purpose ultimately is to produce a just society, a socially just society. In other words, ultimate purpose would be to help eradicate poverty and misery and oppression of those who are least empowered in society. I trust and believe, Mr. Namaje, that Africa must rise and Africa will rise. Vernon is quite right. For you young people, Africa has to rise in your lifetime. And it's only when we repeat these vital features of a just society, even as lawyers, it becomes something that will ultimately accrue to a society where law reigns, where democratic practice is observed and reigns, and where our people will escape all of this poverty that surrounds them. Thank you for listening. If you've forgotten everything else, you'll do well to remember Africa must rise in our lifetime. I thank you and good night.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Moseneke, as I listen to you speak, I remember that in my own Liberator, there is a version that says that you wanted to be a police officer, inspired obviously by the unfair treatment then in the apartheid regime, and you ended up a lawyer and transcended all the way to a Deputy Chief Justice of South Africa. But after hearing you speak this evening, it left me wondering if you would not have made altogether an even better politician. But I guess at this point, we will never know. Ladies and gentlemen, just a short announcement. The drivers of the following registration numbers, if you can please make your way to where the books are being sold. The people are looking for you there. Car number 1, N215-946 Windhoek. Car number 2, N220115 Windhoek. Car number 3, N47314 Windhoek. Car number 4, 4755 Windhoek. If you can please make your way to where the books are being sold. Yes, the people are looking for you. Justice Moseneke, allow me to say once again that when I obtained my own Liberator in March 2017, and I think maybe someone got it for me, I don't remember so well, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I would see you in person, live, like this. So forgive me if I'm a bit starstruck, but I have one request, that before you leave our law firm this evening, you may please autograph my copy, because I made a few threats, and if you don't, I may be out of work on Monday. So, please. Thank you very much for a rather insightful discussion. And as I listen to you speak, I really want to extend my gratitude that you accepted this invitation to be here with us to this evening. Advocate Maleka, you would remember that this was just a conversation sometime last year. And to have it come to life and to have you speak to us in the manner that you do, especially given the current situation in Africa and in Namibia and in South Africa and really everywhere in the world, I think it's just a reminder of the duty and the task that lies ahead of us. And I found myself wondering if we could have you back for JTC students, because often as legal practitioners, we need the reminder. Because sometimes the ball is rolling too much, the money becomes a lot in our face, and we forget sometimes. So I just really want to extend that gratitude and say once again, thank you for accepting this invitation, and thank you for truly being in our midst, that we can tap into your wisdom and learn from you this evening. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to then invite Advocate Raymond Heathcote, Senior Counsel, Advocate of the High Court and Supreme Court of Namibia. Advocate Heathcote, I have myself briefed you, and when Mr. Ntinda was doing the welcoming remarks, he says that you find solutions where other lawyers may think that there's no solution. But in earnest, it's not just that you find a solution. It's really that if ever I was in trouble and Sisa Namandje was not there, you would be the guy. And you would be the guy because I know that even if we were to lose, you would at least die fighting. With that, Advocate Heathcote, please come and give us one of your eloquent deliveries as narrated by Mr. Ntinda. The floor is yours.
Thank you, First Lady Justice Moseneke. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. And Sisa, thank you so much for the invitation. Now, wasn't that beautiful? Justice Moseneke set out really what our Constitution also says. Our Constitution starts with dignity. Then follows the rule of law. Out of that flows accountability. And if those things fall into place, there will be social justice. And if there is social justice, then we will be complying with those directive principles in our Constitution, excuse me, Article 95 and further. And those include, as all of you may know, women, the health of children, the fair and reasonable access to public facilities. It includes catering and caring for the unemployed, the incapacitated, the disadvantaged, every conceivable person in Namibia. Once we have achieved that, we go back to dignity. We achieve our first principle, and the circle will continue. And thank you for that summary, Justice Moseneke. And I think us as lawyers tonight here, if we can take this home, out of dignity comes the rule of law, flows accountability, will bring social justice, and then Namibia will rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Heathcote. I guess it's rather short and sweet if you are not trying to convince a judge that you should win. Thank you very much for those remarks. We move to the second part of the evening, which is the book launch. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we will first have the introduction of the book by Ms. Kula Simpson. Kula? Oh, okay, the floor is yours, madam.
Well, the pressure. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, all distinguished guests, and all protocols observed. Tonight, yet again, we celebrate a milestone of Mr. Namandje for the launch of his book, The Lawyer's Place in Society and the Professional Secrecy Through Case Law. Now, there are several disclaimers that this book has already been read. My colleagues that have read, let's pretend you have no idea what's going on, as I'm about to outline to you what this book is all about. I'm actually really excited having to listen to Judge Moseneke to outline really the principalities and the importance on not only the concept of confidentiality, but as well as the attitude of our courts insofar as balancing the interests for society. Now, this book covers fundamental jurisprudence on confidentiality, often misconstrued or underestimated. It is with certainty a refresher in an era where lawyers are often labeled the worst people in society for covering criminals, they say. All lawyers are liars. This book was authored with lawyers and legal practitioners in mind as the custodians for the rule of law and because of the noble role we play in society, but in particular the classified role with respect to matters concerning professional secrecy, known as your attorney-owned client confidentiality and privilege. It is the author's view that professional secrecy can only be achieved and maintained once the practitioner has a thorough understanding of the legal principles on attorney-owned client confidentiality and privilege, the rights derived from such privilege, and the reasonable limitations to such rights, which in this context, a practitioner then has the role to convey to a client what such privilege may entail, the characteristics of the privilege, when it may be waived or raised on behalf of a client in the general administration of justice. However, at the same time, the book recognizes that there's an obligation on lawyers to create a safe environment to exist between themselves and a client for an open, frank, and unhindered disclosure of facts and materials by the client to the lawyer. Now, in terms of the structure of the book, the author introduces a legal framework in terms of the constitutional expectation that derive or that sort of protects the confidentiality aspect. And in this instance, it's the right to privacy, which is a substantive rule of law. Now, the reason for stating this is there's a general attitude that it should, in fact, be absolute. However, our Constitution provides limitations to these fundamental rules, provided it meets the reasonableness test in terms of your Article 21, 22 of the Namibian Constitution. This is, of course, very closely related to your reasonableness test in terms of administration law. Now, one can appreciate this book as for the longest time, we've made use to a lot of the South African presidents, the books of Hoekstra and the likes, but now we have a local edition to sort of set great precedents for us on what our position is in Namibia. Now, insofar as attorney-owned client confidentiality is concerned, the author at length expands through case law the legal principles that apply to confidentiality. For instance, the confidential communication, to whom it's made, the information provided, as well as the need to retain such confidence. Now, yes, the book, of course, recognizes the common law position as well as the constitutional position, but it also further extends to explain on other statutory requirements that may become applicable when you're dealing with the question of confidentiality. For instance, the aspects on the Financial Intelligence Act that deals with concerns on confidential information. Now, the aspect on privilege, characteristics of privilege have also been highlighted to the extent that it speaks on a right that a client may assert to prevent the disclosure of information, and as well as the part that the lawyer must remain confidential. Perhaps this is, of course, the reason why society generally has an understanding that lawyers are liars because of what they need to maintain in confidence, which is, of course, not the case. But I hope that has now been clarified. Pardon me, I almost lost myself there. Yes. Now, of course, to state further, what the author then intends to achieve in the book is that he further goes to insert the limitations, and he goes at length to explain how the operation of limitations work. For instance, he makes mention that a right may be limited in that a client is not prohibited from seeking relief to prevent publication of confidential information So any relief that is sought from court to protect any form of confidential information requires a balance of competing values. This is where the author tries to break down the constitutional limitations test and therefore the domestic and selected jurisdiction court's attitude in the determination of these limitations. So really what the author is voicing in this book to an extent is that for attorney-owned client to be used as protection against forced disclosure, it must be clear that such a disclosure or use of such protection must be subject to legitimate interference of limitations and restrictions that are necessary and in accordance with law, rather for the interests of the general public. And now, one particular case that the author directs us to is the Namibian case, Africa Personnel Services versus the Government of the Republic of Namibia. Pardon me, the citation is in the book, wherein the author explains the stages in which the court determines this limitations inquiry. One, whether the disclosure limits the exercise of fundamental freedoms to the client, and if so, to what extent the limitation is applied, and lastly, whether that limitation is constitutional. Where the answer is for one in the negative, that the limitation is permissible, but it is disproportionate to the limitation, or rather the limitations or the requirements provided in Article 2122, or falls outside of the said section, then of course it is unconstitutional and becomes unenforceable. Now, ultimately, the court must be satisfied that each criterion has been satisfied. Again, the author then further extends and explains the comparable limitation clauses in other jurisdictions, such as South Africa and Canada. Now, lastly, the theme that can really be recognized is that in this book is that the proportionality test will always vary depending on the circumstances, and it will always be on a case-to-case basis, and that it will be required that there will be a test for balance between the general public and those of individuals. So in my view, the author has certainly achieved to set out the position in our domestic courts and foreign jurisdictions in relation to legal principles on attorney-owned client confidentiality and privilege, and the competing discussions on the characteristics of privilege and waiver on attorney-owned client confidentiality. I hope this talk has encouraged you to purchase this book tonight. It is available at the foyer, alternatively during business hours, and also at Book Den. And if you can't find it, arrangements can be made. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kula. So now, I need to call the author. But before I call the author, Kuku Hambelela, I was told Miss Hambelela Namanja wants to say something before I call her father. So, Ben. Okay. Okay, you can stand here. No, it's fine. I'll give her. Yeah, you can just talk.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Hambelela Namanja. I want to thank you all for coming to my father's book launch. Tata, congratulations on your 4th book. I am very happy for you and proud of you. I hope you write many more books and you continue working hard every day. Tata works hard every day, even on weekends, to put us on school. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. For the whole speech and you didn't tell me. Yeah, you didn't tell me. Okay, I'm going to say. This one.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for coming here and gathering in honor of my father. My name is Gottfried Namanja. I won't take much of your time because we've been here for a while, but I do have a few words to say. So most people, whether they're present here or not, know my dad as this, ruthless, successful machine of a lawyer in the courtroom. And outside of the courtroom, some know him as, the lawyer in the newspaper who's representing that person, winning this case. Some know him as an author. Some people even know him as a soldier. I don't really like speaking in public, but I felt the need to get up here and humanize my father a bit. So that, some people... Can you guys hear me properly? Is it fine? Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah, I felt the need to get up here to humanize my father a bit so that, some people can also view him as the happy, cheerful, kind, inspirational, and selfless man that he is. And I have a quick story. When I was in primary school and high school, my dad would always drop me at school like an hour earlier. Whether it's summer, winter, it's freezing, I was almost always the first one at school. And obviously, as a kid, I was, mad at my dad about this, and I complained about it. But what I never realized at the time was that he dropped me early because this was the time that he went to school. To work. And somewhat 15, 16 years later, he still carries the same schedule, clocking in early, Sundays, weekends, working hard. As I eventually, began to mature, I realized that, the reason he was doing all this was to make sure that, my little sisters, Ambela, Yalo, and myself are able, to live the life that he didn't have the opportunity to live when he was our age. This is my dad's fourth book, and some people can only dream of even, publishing one, but either they don't have the opportunity to or the passion to push through with it. But my father has created both of these things for himself. And things like this are what continually, inspire me to keep pushing to be the man that I want to be for myself. And yeah, I have a message also from my little sister because she's not really much of a speaker. And she just wants to thank our father, and congratulate him on his fourth book and for being a good dad. And before I get off, I have a funny story to tell. So just to hammer my point about humanizing my dad. So those of you that are lucky and fortunate enough to have my dad on WhatsApp and view his stories, you would sometimes, I have noticed, and I know some have, that he likes to use this little emoji that's a bit out of character, and every time I see that, I always have a chuckle because I try to put myself in the shoes of, someone who was, facing him in court and he just surfed the floor with him, and then they get home, they go on WhatsApp and they see this thing and they're like, is this really the man that wiped the floor with me? But, that's just who my dad is, Outside of the courtroom, he's cheerful, to earth, a happy soul, and that's a side that people really get who he is. So thank you.
Thank you, Penda and Diallo. I think with that, ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to do an introduction of the author for this evening. Allow me to call Mr. Sisa Namanje to the podium. You have a speech. Okay, my boss, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Taimi. First Lady, I think, hello? First Lady. Oh, First Lady of the Republic of Namibia. Allow us to call you Monica. She's here today as a lawyer. We spent 5 years in the same university for 5 years, failing tests sometimes. And see, we didn't know Africans then. She would always then come when she's out of food. Now she's a first rate. Judge Moseneke, we are humbled to have you in Namibia, first of all. I'm sure that what you say tonight is moving everybody, is very inspirational. And I'm sure that there were many of our leaders that were listening. And what you said is not something far from our environment around us. We know this. We just need to find a way to fix it. At Sisa Namanje Company, we are quite humbled to bring you to Namibia. As Taimi said, even myself, I always thought I should meet you, should speak to you, for your story inspired us all. I was asked to speak about the book. This is the one. But before that, I have something to speak, and I will start with it, particularly in view of what Justice Moseneke spoke about. Hundreds of our people every day are suffering so much that they really do not have dignity. And the problem as far as the legal profession is concerned, even lawyers these days, young people, admitted lawyers in the street these days. And it's very, very concerning. We get lawyers, young lawyers coming to our office here who are asking if they could even just get an opportunity to work so that they feel they are lawyers because for 2 years they tried their best, they cannot find a job. So it's not going well, particularly for the legal profession. That's why what I'm going to speak about first is the Sisa Namanje Foundation. How it started over the last 3 years. We had a very haphazard way of contributing to social projects and assisting people. Sometimes it's my own money, sometimes it's the law firm, but we assist communities all over Namibia particularly over the last 5 years. But in particular, what happened in the last 3 years, it became worse with people coming to the office, and like they do go to other offices. Some people come here crying that they simply want $100, just $100. My PA, Ilse, can tell you we get emails every day. People asking even a $50. So we used to give money, Sisa Namanje law firm, myself, and so forth. Then we decided we will be establishing a foundation of which Taimi is the chairperson. And this started particularly because in the legal practitioner, we found that there is no system. If I get in a car accident and I didn't prepare myself to have proper insurance covers, there are so many of us. Once we get sick, once we get challenges, health challenges, we find ourselves going to our villages to stay there because there is simply no system. I'm particularly happy with my colleagues, directors at Sisana Management Company. At one point, I was crying. I went to them with a very difficult decision to make in 2019. A colleague of us, senior legal practitioner, got in a situation where he was really not feeling well to the extent that he can no more practice at all. And you see, if you have worked at a law firm, everybody's saying, yeah, I'm writing my fees. And I went with a very difficult decision to not to let our colleague suffer. Ask whether we can carry his salary at least for a year. We started in 2019 in August, and of course, because Corona came, we carried our colleague up to last year, August, for 24 months. And it wasn't easy. In law firms, you see some people are whispering, why should we be paying somebody when we are under pressure writing fees? Because of that, we realized that we should formalize the way we assist society. It was particularly because of that we realized that in addition to what we generate and set aside to assist people, we must establish a foundation so that we can also be supported by other people that can assist. It is for that reason that in the last year, some of you may have seen in the media that we have been assisting. This year, when we started speaking to Justice Moseneke, because of the positive impact and changes you have brought in people's lives in South Africa and Africa, and the grace you have, skills you have in law, and your inspiration to all of us, we decided to honor you in a special way, which is to make a small and modest positive change to few people at this occasion. And this is a Moseneke project. And we will further honor you for the next 5 years. Next 5 years, our foundation, I will announce, will try and assist 2 young lawyers, and I will set out the terms. So, in the honor of Justice Moseneke this year, just now, and these are not, they are small contribution, but after making these donations and assistance, they are, of course, short-lived smiles on people's faces. The first one is that we gave recently, as part of the Moseneke project, 10,000 to Bright Hill Pre-Primary School, 10,000. That is 9,879. We gave to UNAM School of Law for they had a conference, an African network of constitutional lawyers during August 2022. We gave an amount of 10,000. Then there is this story of a 4-year-old child, Swakopmund. Somebody threw something into the house, and she had her body deformed, badly damaged. We gave 10,000 to assist. We gave a student at a local college crying for registration fee, just now, recently, 7,000. And just now, including last week, and this is a Moseneke project, a student at UNAM, as a law student, who was struggling. In fact, is a first year who could not register last year. He was admitted, but he could not register. So he came to us again, he almost was not registered as a student. In total this year, same project, we gave 30,485. And this is part when we started speaking to Justice Moseneke, and in recognition, excited we are coming and we want to make positive change to people's lives in the small way we could. And today, this is what we are going to do in your honor, Justice Moseneke. And we will, for today, we invited partners to partner us to make changes in people's lives. There are a few people that are around here. Harvey, my client there, one of them, gave us 25,000. Then we will put it to good use. One of my client, Shapra, and his wife gave us 50,000. Dr. Shari Thete gave us 10,000. And Nambiri is a product of our law firm, gave us 1,500. And there are some other donations, but some people did not want their names to be stated. But I will, if I remember, I will. But what we are going to do is this. You would remember that in the last 2 years, we assisted about, actually, 3 lawyers outside Windhoek to set up law firms. And today, we are announcing, maybe one of you is here. If you just got admitted now, you are ambitious, you have some money from an uncle, but you still need some few bags to buy computers, we will give you 25,000. So what you will do, you apply to the foundation, you motivate, and the only condition is that you must be a young person who is prepared to set up a law firm in communities other than Windhoek, outside, Corrihas, Opuo. There, we will give you 25. It's a grant, you are not going to pay it. And 2 people, immediately available. And this is what we are going to do for the next 5 years. Every year, we are going to assist 2 people, young lawyers, outside Windhoek. Today, we are giving out 15,000 to assist a media student at UNAM. Some of you may have seen recently in the newspaper, to assist him with his wheelchair. We are contributing 15,000 today. There is a school in Monte Cristo, it's called Monte Cristo Primary School. Just go there tomorrow. Just go there, check. You will cry. Just go there. We will assist them with a 10,000 to assist in a smaller way. Okay. And JTC students, if there is one of you who is unable to pay your exam now, there is a 5,000 available. You apply, Taimi will assess. Taimi, Ilse, and Esther will assess and give out. So and we are going to continue Justice Moseneke this year. We are going to make out to make more donations. And for the next 5 years, in your honor, we are going to assist 2 lawyers every year. So the book, everybody have already spoken about it. I will not say anything about it. safe to say that it is important sometimes to let people know what lawyers stand for. Many times, even lawyers that have contributed to the good of this continent, like Justice Moseneke, could find themselves being subject of insults simply for doing their work. Lawyers do everything that is necessary for us to maintain the rule of law. So we owe nobody an explanation as to what we stand for. For what we stand for is constitutionally recognized. Hence, people have choice to legal representations, whether they are the most darkest persons among us or the most naughty one. Everybody is entitled to be assisted by a lawyer. So I think to young lawyers, I don't think one need to be apologetic about what you do. So that's what I decided to write that book. And the other part of the book, Kura have spoken about it. And yeah, buy it. You will know what it is about. And so I think let's network. Let's spend the night here. If the police doesn't come, I don't think so. And thanks to everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Namanje. I couldn't find the right words after you left the podium, but though we are in a secular state, I remain a Christian, and in the book of Isaiah 32:8, it says, "But a generous man devises generous things, and by generosity he shall stand." When we started the Sisa Namanje Foundation, it was really a project close to my heart, and you availed the money. Thank you for your money, sir. But really, when Mr. Namanje says we are flooded with emails, it's not just people asking for money, it's the circumstances that they find themselves in. And he spoke about a UNAM student who couldn't register last year. That student came here on an internship because Mr. Namanje had announced an internship. And he came, he was lucky, he got selected. He came, he did his work. And later he applied to the foundation, or rather he SMSed Mr. Namanje, I think on WhatsApp, and said, "No, please assist me with the 3,000. I just need to register tomorrow. I cannot miss this chance again." And I don't know, I think Mr. Namanje said email timey, and he emailed. And so I came to the office, and you know, sometimes we read these emails and it's just near next to impossible to not feel human again. Because, I mean, if not for our assistance, some of these people, their circumstances are so sad. So, and that's the work that the Sisa Namanje Foundation does. I know there are chance takers. I get the emails. Oh, colleagues, stop it. But really, Mr. Namanje, I just really want to say, may you be blessed, that there may be no lack for you, that you may lend and never borrow. Yeah, and yeah, just prosper and give us the money. So thank you very much for your announcements, and thank you for the work that the Sisa Namanje Foundation is able to do through your contributions, and particularly thank you to the people that came forth for the announcements that were done today. Your contributions will really make such a great difference in the lives of many, many Namibians who, without your assistance, would not be able to get better opportunities. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have really come to what I would consider almost the end of our program this evening, at least the formal part. And I will call Ms. Astrid Ferris to deliver our vote of thanks. But before I leave the podium, there's a car blocking. Please. There's a car blocking the driveway. My phone. Sorry, colleagues. The driver of N215072 Windhoek. N215072 Windhoek. Please just go to where the people are selling the books. The car is is blocking the driveway. I think it's City View somewhere. So please, before we get chased out of here. So before I call Ms. Ferris, I just want to announce that when we leave here, there are drinks being served. There's also food I've previously already announced. We will obviously designate for our guests where you will be served. But most importantly, for the young people, we brought Katutura to the center of Windhoek West. There is Kapana somewhere outside. Once you have drank enough Hennessy. So, yes. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for indulging me this evening. I would like to leave you with the words of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe when he said that Africa will not retreat, Africa will not relent, Africa will not equivocate. May we carry this message when we go out in society. And as Justice Moseneke said this evening, may you remember that Africa in our lifetime must rise. Thank you very much. Ms. Ferris, the floor is yours.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Astrid Ferris. I am a director at Sisa Namanje. First Lady of Namibia, Judge Moseneke, and all distinguished guests, thank you very much for being here tonight. No duty is more urgent than that of returning thanks. So I've been blessed with this duty, and I will make it very quick because I know everybody wants to get up and have a drink, something to eat. First of all, our beautiful First Lady of Namibia, Madam Gengos, you are always at our functions. And I want to say thank you so much that you are always gracing us with your presence and you support us in all our causes. On behalf of the firm and myself, thank you so much. Judge Moseneke, thank you so much for traveling all the way from South Africa, taking the time to give us the lecture. We are inspired, we remain inspired. Thank you so much. And all the councils from South Africa, Advocate Maleka, thank you so much for joining us once again. I think it was with the opening of the building of our offices that you were also here. Thank you for supporting us. Our judges, I'm very pleased to see you here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Our senior counsels, Advocate Heathcote, and I think there's more counsels, and the junior counsels, our advocates from the bar. Thank you for being here with us tonight. You are also always supporting us. All our colleagues, my colleagues, and our junior colleagues, everybody from the legal fraternity, thank you so much for always being here, supporting our causes. We are grateful. And then I just want to say one last thing. Mr. Namanje, Sisa. I've been with Sisa now for 10 years, and I've been honored. Everybody hears, he's hardworking, but you must see it to believe it. You must see it. It is amazing. He's a teacher. In fact, in 2016, I think, Caesar approached us and he said, let's write a book. And he gave everybody, now write your piece, write your piece. But I think we were too slow for him. We were definitely, the next thing is like, I wrote the book. And I was like, for all of us. But yes, thank you, Caesar. Caesar is a teacher. Caesar is a teacher at the firm, and most of his time on WhatsApp, he sends case law, judgments, opinions, and his words are, read, colleagues, read. You must have a reading culture. That's what he wants. So that's why he writes these books, because, he leads by example. He doesn't just tell us to read. He writes the books so we can read. So, Caesar, thank you so much. We are honored, we are blessed to have you and what you've been doing for the firm. And then at the same time, I'd like to thank Melovisa for being the support system for Caesar. He means so much to us. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who bought the book, thank you. It's much appreciated. And to our clients, also welcome and thank you. Enjoy the night, ladies and gentlemen. Please, network, eat, drink. Let's celebrate.
Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to request you to please remain seated so that our guests can just pass so that they can. I will ask Taimi and the colleagues to assist, but I also allow me, colleagues, to acknowledge that Shifeta Pohamba, our Minister of Environment and Tourism, but I'm not acknowledging him because he's a minister, but because my wife comes from his village. So I must acknowledge him. So, colleagues, you can once our special guest has moved to the other side, you are more than welcome to stay this side or even to move and get some drinks. We will be serving and moving around, serving, but feel free to also move around. Thank you very much.
Baby, I've been thinking about you. You know that I love you, and I'm fooling with you, what you with. I go do anything for you. Stand the someday. My baby, I've been thinking about you. What is it that you done to me, oh? Jalo natabanga, fala chatanga. Did you pour me a love potion, oh? My baby, I can't stop thinking about you.